Today we are exploring one of the strangest presidential stories in American history, the death, funeral, and the ultimate exhuming of Zachary Taylor, America's 12th president. But this just isn't about his mysterious death. We'll explore family tragedies, including his beloved daughter marrying a man who would become president of the Confederacy, a grieving First Lady who retreated from public view, and why 141 years after his death, Taylor's body was dug up in a modern investigation. Join us for this fascinating journey into one of America's most overlooked presidential stories. Before we dive into the circumstances of his death, let's take a look at the man himself. Zachary Taylor wasn't your typical politician. He was a career military officer who earned the nickname Old Rough and Ready for his plain appearance and humble style. Despite owning slaves himself, he opposed the expansion of slavery into new territories, creating tension with Southern politicians. What many people don't know is that Taylor never even voted in a presidential election until his own. He claimed he never found a candidate worthy of his vote. And when the Whig Party nominated him for president in 1848, Taylor didn't know about it until weeks later. There was no telephone or telegraph where he was stationed. Unlike most presidents of his era, Taylor had little formal education. Yet, he was a shrewd military strategist who became a national hero during the Mexican-American War. This popularity catapulted him into the White House despite having no political experience whatsoever. Let's take a break here for a moment and really realize how old some of these photos are of Zachary Taylor. Many of these are over 180 years old. The oldest known photograph of a U.S. president is of John Quincy Adams, taken in 1843. Many of these of Zachary Taylor are a close second as the oldest. July 4th, 1850, Washington, D.C. was celebrating Independence Day with speeches and ceremonies. President Taylor attended lengthy outdoor festivals on what was an extremely hot day. After hours in the blistering sun, Taylor returned to the White House and consumed large quantities of raw fruits and vegetables along with iced milk. Within hours, Taylor fell violently ill. His symptoms included severe cramping, diarrhea, nausea, and fever. His personal physician diagnosed him with what now we call acute gastritis, but treatments of the era were primitive at best. Doctors administered a regimen that would horrify modern medical professionals. They gave him opium to control the pain, a mercury compound as a laxative, and quinine for fever. They also performed bloodletting, all standard treatments of the time that likely made his condition worse rather than better. By July 9th, just 5 days after falling ill, President Taylor called his wife to his bedside. His final words to her were, "I am about to die. I expect the summons soon. I have tried to discharge my duties faithfully. I regret nothing, but I am sorry that I am about to leave my friends." That evening, Zachary Taylor died at 10:35 p.m. He had served just 16 months as president. At 65 years old, he became the second president to die in office. But whispers immediately began circulating. Was it really just bad milk and cherries that killed the president? Or was there something more sinister at work? Taylor's funeral was one of the largest Washington had seen, with an estimated 100,000 people lining the street as his funeral procession made its way through the Capitol. The president's body was initially interred in Washington's Congressional Cemetery until arrangements could be made to transport him to Kentucky. Eventually, Taylor was buried on his family plantation near Louisville, Kentucky. A 50-foot tall monument of Italian marble would later mark his grave. But perhaps most notable about the funeral, who wasn't there? His wife Margaret, the First Lady who had already withdrawn from public life. Margaret Taylor remains one of America's least known First Ladies, and for good reason. She was so reclusive that there isn't a verified portrait or photograph of her from her adult life. When her husband became president, Margaret was already in poor health and grieving the death of her parents and a daughter. Instead of hosting social events as expected for a First Lady, Margaret retreated to a room on the second floor of the White House where she prayed, smoked a pipe, and avoided public appearances. She delegated her social duties to her daughter Betty, who served as the de facto First Lady during Taylor's brief presidency. Margaret was so upset with Washington life that she reportedly prayed for her husband's defeat in the election. When he won anyways, she viewed it as a death sentence. In a sense, she was right. Taylor died in office, and Margaret herself died just 2 years later, never having recovered from the loss of her husband. Perhaps the most tragic family story involves Taylor's daughter, Sarah Knox Taylor, and Jefferson Davis, the man who would later become President of the Confederate States of America. In 1835, against her father's wishes, Sarah Taylor married Lieutenant Jefferson Davis, who was then serving under Colonel Zachary Taylor in the military. Taylor strongly objected to the marriage. He didn't dislike Davis personally. He respected him as an officer. But Taylor knew the hardships of military life and didn't want that for his daughter. Despite Taylor's objections, the couple married and resigned from the Army, planning to become cotton farmers in Mississippi. Tragically, just 3 months after their wedding, both Sarah and Davis contracted malaria. While Davis eventually recovered, Knox died at age 21. Her death devastated both men, and Taylor blamed Davis for taking his daughter to the unhealthy climate of Mississippi. Years later, when both men were prominent national figures, Taylor as president and Davis as a senator, they reconciled briefly. But the bitterness never fully disappeared. In one of history's greatest ironies, the father of the Confederacy had once been the son-in-law of a president who opposed the expansion of slavery. Another hidden fact about President Taylor's family is his son, Richard Taylor. During the Mexican-American War, he served as a military secretary to his father, and after President Taylor's death in 1850, he inherited the family's Louisiana sugar plantation and became one of the richest men in Louisiana. In 1855, he was elected to the Louisiana Senate and served until the outbreak of the Civil War, when Jefferson Davis appointed him colonel in command of the 9th Louisiana Infantry. He fought at the Battle of Bull Run and was promoted to Brigadier General of the CSA in October 1861. Now let's fast forward to 1991, 141 years after Taylor's death. Author Clara Rising had been researching Taylor's death and developed a theory. What if Taylor had been poisoned with arsenic? The timing was suspicious. Taylor's anti-slavery stance was threatening to tear the country apart. His sudden death and replacement by President Fillmore, who promptly signed the Compromise of 1850, seemed convenient for pro-slavery factions. Rising convinced Taylor's descendants to allow an exhuming of Taylor for forensic testing. On June 17, 1991, Taylor's remains were carefully removed from his tomb in Kentucky and transported to the Kentucky State Medical Examiner's Office. Using neutron-activated analysis, scientists tested Taylor's hair, fingernails, and tissue samples for arsenic. The results? Taylor's body contained only trace amounts of arsenic, about 1/25th the level that would indicate poisoning. The official conclusion? Zachary Taylor died of natural causes, likely due to a stomach ailment as originally diagnosed. Zachary Taylor's short presidency and strange death remain one of the most overlooked episodes in American history. From his mysterious demise to his daughter's tragic marriage to a future Confederate president, and even the 20th century investigation that briefly brought him back into the spotlight, Taylor's story reminds us that history is full of unexpected connections and unsolved mysteries. If you enjoyed this exploration of presidential history, please like this video and subscribe for more hidden history videos. Until next time, remember, the past is never truly buried, sometimes quite literally.